the 19th of April 2022, after Russia announced it would focus its military efforts on southeastern Ukraine, intensive airstrikes and artillery bombardment rained down across the broad arc of the contact line between Izium to Nikolaev. But the sound and fury have proved a passing spring storm. In the low-level fighting that ensued, Russia has only ground forward despite expectations that a major concentrated use of force could tip the conflict in Moscow's favor after its failed assault on Kyiv. Much about the war is still hard to read. The combat status of the Joint Forces operation, the Ukrainian army group that forms the bulk of the battle-hardened force deployed in the eastern region of Donbass since the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014, is a critical unknown, for example. What seems clear is that even with a vastly circumscribed set of military objectives, wound back from a plan for the lightning subjugation of the entire country, Russia, a would-be military equal of the US, is still faltering. Russia is making minimal, at best, progress, said one US defense official. In some cases, quite frankly, the best word to describe it will be anemic. According to Oleksiy Arestovich, an advisor to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, Vladimir Putin's revised aim is the total capture of the eastern provinces of Luhansk and Donetsk and the southern province of Kherson. The Russian president had hoped to do so by May the 9th, by May the 9th parade in Moscow, said Arestovich, a former military intelligence official. But that now looked impossible, he said. Russia was trying to advance 200 kilometers in 20 days, which is in line with the normal military doctrine. In 28 days they have moved only 25 kilometers. Kremlin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed claims that May 19, a commemoration of Russia's victory in the Second World War, was a significant date in Moscow's military calculus. But the shifting tone in Russian state media, where that was once described as a limited regional special operation, is now being more openly discussed as a fight for national survival against the West. It suggests Moscow is preparing for a longer campaign. In such an endeavor, Russia still has advantages. It's important to remember we have very little to judge the tempo of this conflict against, where you have two relative peers fighting over a huge territory, said Sam Crania Evans at the Royal United Services Institute. When you are talking about one very well motivated side versus a less well motivated but better equipped side, imperfectly led, how do you assess what kind of pace operations should be going at to be successful or not? Russia's slow movement in the latest phase could be down to Ukrainian resistance, but could also be deliberate, Crane Evans added. As Russian commanders have reconstituted their forces after April 19th, they have sought to play to military strengths, particularly superior artillery power, but this in turn has dictated a change in pace and tactics. Artillery has become overwhelmingly important for the Russians. It is how they are delivering effects on the battlefield, but it is by nature slow because you are dependent on artillery logistics, according to Crane Evans. In traditional Russian military doctrine, heavy artillery bombardment will be followed by rapid advances of tanks and infantry, but the resources for this are now in short supply after the failed military campaign to overrun Kiev in March. Russia's commanders may also be chastened by disasters they are both thinking created, some NATO officials believe. Russia appears to be using its superior artillery as a more methodical tool of attrition, according to Astovich. Russia outnumbers Ukrainian artillery by a ratio of 5 to 1. Alexander V. Daniliuk, a defense and intelligence advisor at the Ukrainian government, said Russia intensified its artillery strikes to exhaust Ukrainian supply. They want to reach the position where we have no ammunition at all, so they can start their land offensive without fear of being destroyed, he said. At some point, Russia may aim to shift the gear on such so-called shipping operations, not least because of the West's intensifying efforts to supply Ukrainian forces with heavier weaponry. Analysts and Ukrainian officials say there could be 3 likely areas of Russian focus, down from Izium in the north upwards towards Kryvyi and towards Zaporizhia from the south. Russia is concentrating resources in the north. According to a UK military intelligence report this week, Russia now has 22 battle groups in Izium and will probably push south as the main thrust of its operations to secure the Donbass. Operations to take ground in Kherson may be more challenging. Russia does not appear to have sufficient forces based there to take Kryvyi and Zaporizhia, Western officials have indicated. Meanwhile, the 50 Russian missile strikes that hit targets across Ukraine on Tuesday was the 3rd of May, told their own story. Targets included power plants and railways. The Russians are trying to degrade Ukrainian frontliners' ability to resupply and reinforce themselves, the US defense official said, adding that no Western supplied military aid appears to have been impeded. Either way, the targets far behind the front lines indicate that Russia is no longer anticipating lightning advances. Russia's new phase in its invasion of Ukraine may well last into the summer. So, anemic Russian progress signals descent into attritional conflict. The latest moves on battlefield suggests change in thinking from initial rapid advance strategy. So that was what you have just heard, and thank you very much for watching this video.